Hi there, welcome to our webinar today. My name is Amy Moore. I'm the Director of Awards for the Fulbright Commission. So I oversee the all of the Fulbright Award programs, but in particular the UK Postgraduate Programme and the UK Scholar Programme, which many of you are here to talk about today. And I'm joined by Brittany Lair, who's our Senior Programme Manager for the UK Postgraduate Programme, supporting British students going to pursue postgraduate study in the US. And Brittany also works very closely with Rebecca Cobby, who is the Senior Programme Manager for the UK Scholar Programme. And we're here today to briefly talk to you about what the Fulbright Awards are, talk you through some of the awards that are on offer, why you should apply, and most importantly, we're just offering you some time to ask us some questions. Brittany is going to be answering any questions you have about making your application or anything that you're struggling with at the moment. So to begin with, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Fulbright Awards are as an introduction, and then we'll move into some more information about the awards. Okay, so the Fulbright Awards are scholarships offering funding for postgraduate, academic, or professional study and research. And it's a global program offering exchanges between the US and over 160 different countries. And the US-UK Fulbright Commission is funded by the US and the UK governments with the mission of promoting mutual understanding between the US and the UK through educational exchange. And since 1949, we've had around 15 UK nationals who studied in the US and 12,000 US nationals who studied in the UK through Fulbright exchanges, with an alumni network of over 300,000, probably closer to 370,000 Fulbright alumni worldwide. So it's a huge global program. Ultimately, it's to fund British nationals to do postgraduate study in the US and Americans to do postgraduate study in the US, and then for those that have already got a master's and a PhD to do postdoctorate research or professional research in the US and the UK. So I'm going to pass you over to Brittany, who's going to talk a little bit about all the individual awards on offer. And then I'll give a few reasons as to why you should go through the effort of applying. And then we'll hand it over to you guys to ask us any questions that you have. Over to you, Brittany.
Okay. I'm going to give a brief overview of the awards program for the UK at Fulbright. We have both postgraduate and scholar awards available, as Amy mentioned. The postgraduate awards include master's degrees, PhDs, visiting research at the PhD level, and non-degree study at the master's level. And the scholar awards include visiting professorships and visiting research in the US. We give approximately 40 UK grants per year between the two programs. Applications we accept for any discipline and at any accredited US university or research institution. For the PG program, the postgraduate program, programs must be full-time and in person to be eligible. So here's a list of the awards that we have on offer this year for the 2019-2020 competition. As you can see at the top of the list, we have the All Disciplines Postgraduate Award. So this is open to any discipline at any US university. Following that on the list, we have a chunk of subject-specific awards, and then at the bottom of the list, we have a bunch of US university-specific awards. So I'll just go into more detail about those. The subject-specific awards that we have, okay, so we have the Alistair Cooke Award in Journalism. So this is at any US university, any program studying journalism or a subject leading to a career in journalism. So that can be, for example, area studies or documentary filmmaking, broadcast journalism, things of that nature. Next, we have the Elsevier Data Analytics Award. So this award can fund programs for statistics, mathematics, data analysis, data science, computer science. It's funded by the Elsevier publication organization. The Nursing Award for Medical Studies is for any degree related to studying a medical studies program, which is not clinical or patient focused, which is not eligible under the Fulbright program. The Lloyds of London Award is sponsored by the Lloyds of London Research Foundation. This is for risk analysis study, not just in the insurance sector, in any sector. So this can include government risk, cybersecurity risk, environmental risk, any area that includes risk analysis. And finally, we have the Sir Cyril Taylor Memorial Award for Social Entrepreneurship. This is new this year. It's any discipline that has to do with social entrepreneurship or making a change in society. And now we will move on to the university-specific awards. So these are institutions in the US that have partnered with us, Fulbright in the UK, to offer a funding opportunity for a British student. First on the list is British Friends of Harvard Business School MBA Award. So this is for an MBA at Harvard Business School. The deadline for this award is actually in April, but if you're applying to Harvard Business School and another US university for an MBA, you need to apply by November 6th in this early round of competition. Next on the list is the University of South Florida. This is for a PhD, fully funded 4-year or 5-year PhD at USF. There's a list of subjects that they will accept applications for on our website, but these include mainly science-based subjects, chemistry, physics, applied anthropology, criminology, and the list goes on. So please check our website for that full list. Next is the NYU Wagner Executive Masters of Public Administration Award. This is a mid-career award where you spend 1 semester in New York at NYU Wagner and the second semester back in London at UCL for the 1.5-year degree. And the funding is for the first semester at NYU. The Hubert H. Humphrey School Award in Public Policy Affairs and Planning. This is for the University of Minnesota, any of their 2-year master's degrees, a full tuition and fee waiver at that school. Indiana University offers an LLM package. So this is a full tuition waiver for any of the LLM programs offered at Indiana University. So this is any of their law master's degrees. And finally, Brown University offers a PhD award for any of their PhD programs. It's a fully funded 4 or 5-year program. Okay, that's all the PG awards that we have this year. Moving on to the Scholar Awards. Again, this is for postdoctoral visiting research and visiting lectureships. The same structure applies. We have an All Disciplines Award, which is open to any discipline at any US university. The scholar would set up that affiliation themselves and then propose the project in their application. We have a series of subject-specific awards as well, which I won't go into much detail about, but there's a wide range of topics, some medical, some public service, public sector, and some cultural studies, like the Royal Society of Edinburgh, which is focused on Scottish, making an impact in Scottish society. And then there's 2 university-specific awards. The Elon University Award is for a visiting professorship, and also the University of South Florida Postdoctoral Award at USF as well. So thank you. That's a list of our awards.
Okay, so there's a big commitment in applying for a Fulbright Award. The application is quite heavy going, especially on top of the work that you'd be doing to apply to the US university. But I just want to make the case that it's very much worthwhile, and at the very least, it actually helps you finely tune your decision making and you're applying to the US universities in the first place when you're working on your Fulbright application. But to point out some 5 top reasons why it's worth your effort. Firstly is access to the US's world-class education. There's just so much choice in the US, and it's such a diverse education system out there, with so many opportunities. So that in itself is a huge attraction, something that Fulbright is promoting. The financial support that you receive through your Fulbright Award is generous. It goes a long way, and it certainly helps when you're negotiating financial support from US universities to say that you're a Fulbright awardee, because often they want to have you at their institution. For personal and professional development, just the mere process of taking yourself out of your comfort zones and being in a new place, but with the support of Fulbright and the cohort that you'd be going with who are going through similar experiences, is personally and professionally very worthwhile. The feedback we get from our returning awardees is that they tend to have a boost in confidence, they make a fantastic network of people, and they come back with new knowledge and skills. So it's definitely worthwhile. And finally, well, not finally, but for an immersive cultural experience in the US, one of the unique differences between Fulbright funding and perhaps some of the other academic funding out there is that we really celebrate the cultural experience, the things outside, both within and outside of your research. We want you to immerse yourself into the culture that you're going to and get to know people, to travel the US, and it definitely celebrates that side of an exchange program like this. And finally, to be a part of a global network of, as I said, over 3,700 Fulbright scholars, 1,000 scholars across the world, all who have been selected on merit, leadership qualities, but from a real diverse set of subject areas, make for a really interesting group of people to be connected with. So for those reasons, it's really worthwhile you taking the plunge and making a Fulbright application if you think it's a good fit for you. So we're going to pause just for a moment while we tune into our Facebook Live, if you could bear with us, and then basically I will be taking your questions, reading them out, and Brittany will be answering them, and any questions we can't answer, we'll do our best to follow up after the webinar today. So bear with us a moment. Okay, hopefully you can see us now. Hi everybody. Okay, so if you have any questions, please start sending them our way, and we'll do our best to answer them. I'll be keeping an eye on the questions and reading them out. To kick us off, I'm going to basically field my questions to Brittany, and we'll take it from there so that everyone understands what the question is. And Brittany has been here since 2014, working with on the UK programme, so she has a lot of the answers, if I'm completely honest. So okay, so the first question, Brittany, what do you look for in a Fulbrighter?
Good question. Thank you for asking that. So first and foremost, the Fulbright scholarship is an academic achievement. So we look for academic excellence and strength of the project that you're submitting. But more than that, Fulbright is looking for more well-rounded candidates that have shown things like leadership skills and initiative. So we're looking for people who've been active in their communities, active inside and out of the classroom, who want to make a difference in their field of study or in wider society through whatever passion projects they have or personal interests that they have. Another really important aspect is curiosity for the US and American culture. The Fulbright program is about making links between the US and the UK. So we're looking for people who can demonstrate that ability and that interest to do that, to really get out of the classroom and participate in the US culture, to learn something while they're there about, you know, America and American culture, maybe beyond what you may know from popular culture, movies, TV, and then also share something about your culture with the Americans that you'll meet while you're there. So in that sense, you're really serving as an ambassador for the Fulbright program, for the UK, for whatever region of the UK you come from. So that ambassadorial quality is something we really look for.
Great, thank you. And we have a question about the project statement. What level of specific detail about the proposed research project is required?
Well, okay, it's different for postgrads and scholars. So I'm not sure if this question comes from someone applying from the postgrad program or the scholar program. So if you can type in whether you are, which one you are, that would be helpful. But I'll just start answering for both. For postgrads, we do want detail. It's not exactly like a dissertation proposal. We do want specific aspects of your project, what you're hoping to achieve in the US, so we can make sure you've thought it out and that it's realistic, that you've thought it out in terms of the timeline and the feasibility. Also, there are academic experts in your field of study going to be assessing your application, so it's important for them to see that your project in enough detail for them to evaluate it academically. So for the scholar program, it will be a lot more detail required. So the project outline, we ask for very detailed, more like a research proposal to be submitted. The same as the PG program, there are experts in your field evaluating that proposal, so you do want to be communicating a level of expertise so those experts can see that knowledge level.
Great, thanks. So for those of you tuning in right now, please feel free to ask more questions. We have some coming through, and if you're on Facebook, you're more than welcome to comment on the live stream, any questions you have. We have a question about the funding side of things, but I thought in relation to the project statement question, it might be useful for you to talk the audience through how we assess the Fulbright applications, so they understand who's reading their project statement, for example.
Yeah, so the first round of the selection process is an academic review. So each application will be read by 3 academic subject matter experts in that field. So we will break up the application pool by subject and assign at least 3 subject matter experts, and they are assessing your application for academic strength, academic merit, and the feasibility and strength of the project. The second part of the selection process, we draw a short list up from the academic review, and we have face-to-face interviews. So the interviews are held in February. They're held in London, Edinburgh, Belfast, and the panel that you will be interviewed by is non-experts. So you will be asked questions about your project, but also about your leadership skills, ambassadorial qualities, and your interests in US culture.
Okay, great, thank you. And then the next question we have, so Fulbright might not cover 2 years of tuition fees. What have previous Fulbrighters done to deal with this issue? That's a really good question. I'll let you.
Yes, that is true. A lot of American postgraduate programs are 2 years long. There are some programs that are just 1 year long. For the 2 year programs, it is unlikely that the Fulbright contribution will cover all your tuition fees and your living costs. So that does leave a chunk left over that you would need to cover yourself. So there are various ways that other Fulbrighters have approached this. The first way is to find funding from the university. So we recommend that everyone goes to their university first and asks what funding is available for postgraduate study, if there's any grants or fellowships or scholarships that you can apply for. Also, if there are graduate assistantships available, which are positions that, like work positions that you would take from the department or from the university, and you would work on research or teaching, being a teaching assistant with a professor and getting a stipend or some sort of tuition waiver. So some universities have that. So the first stop would be to go to the university and see what they have available. The second step would be external funding bodies. So Fulbright is an external funding body for funding your US study. So you would need to look to find other external funding bodies that could contribute towards your education. So you're sort of collecting funding from different pots is what we describe this as. So there are various ways to look for external funding bodies. One way, a lot of it is on the internet, it just takes a lot of research, unfortunately. But we have on our website resources that will help you start that search. So if you go to our website, going to the USA, find the postgraduate section, and there's a section on postgraduate funding. You can click there and find a variety of resources that will help you start searching for those external funding opportunities. And they can be quite niche. They can be maybe related to personal interests that you have, hobbies, or your field of study, or your personal background. So keep an open mind when you're looking for those external funding opportunities. They will likely involve an application similar to the Fulbright. The third option is personal funding. So a lot of people, talk to family and maybe friends and see and look in their personal finances to see how much they can actually reasonably contribute to their education, and then go from there to find the extra funding. The last option and a last resort, I would say, would be loans. There are some international student loans. It's hard for international students to get U.S. Education loans, but there are some organizations that do loans for international study, but again, it's a last resort.
And just to add on to that, the more research you do now, the better. So once you accept your offer from the US university, it's harder to negotiate funding from them if that's the route that you're relying on. So bear that in mind. It's a lot easier once you have offers from universities to then find out about funding and I guess negotiate a little bit with them before accepting any offers. As soon as you accept an offer, then you have less negotiation power. And also just in general, there's so much choice, as I said earlier, in the US, there's so many really good universities that may not necessarily be as well known here in the UK, that you may not have thought of, that may be more generous in their funding packages. So be a bit open-minded when you're searching and looking at the opportunities, and make sure that funding and scholarships is the first, and assistantships, everything that Brittany just described, are the first things that you're asking those universities when you're inquiring to find out more. Okay, so I have a few more questions coming through. If I'm not successful this year, can I reapply next year? Absolutely. I can answer that one. And the second question is, if we already have a place at a US university that's been deferred, should we address the reasons for the deferral in our application?
It's really not necessary. If you think that there's a reason that you need or want to explain, that's fine, but deferrals are quite common. People defer their admission until they can sort of funding, or until their personal situation allows them to go take up the place. So if there's a circumstance that you feel like you want to explain, then you can, but you don't need to.
Okay, great. And then I have a question regarding the Sir Cyril Award. Am I right in understanding that applying with the plans to complete an MPA, if I have a background in social entrepreneurship, is appropriate?
Just trying to understand the question.
Yeah.
Applying.
If you have a background in social entrepreneurship, it's very broad awards, so it sounds like it would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
An MPA, I think if I understand the question, is an MPA. Does an MPA sound appropriate for someone who has a background in social entrepreneurship for the Sir Cyril Award? And yes, that sounds perfectly reasonable.
And I had another question while we're on the subject of Sir Cyril Taylor Award. I'm interested in applying for both the All Disciplines Award and the Sir Cyril Taylor Award. Could I apply for both, as my field of specialisation interest is business strategy, and thus is it relevant to both awards?
The All Disciplines and the Sir Cyril Taylor, yes, that's fine. Everyone is essentially eligible for the All Disciplines category. So if you do fit into one of the subject-specific or US-specific awards, we recommend you apply in that category, but you would also be eligible for the All Disciplines as well on top of that category. So if you wanted to make that clear in your application, that's okay, but I wouldn't spend too much time explaining why you want to be in the All Disciplines category. And just going back to the Sir Cyril Award, the question about the MPA and also this Business Strategy Award. For Sir Cyril, it's important to connect it back to social entrepreneurship. So if you can explain why an MPA will contribute to your career or your impact in the social entrepreneurship arena, and why business strategy, the same thing, why that has the social entrepreneurship aspect, that's best for that award.
Okay, thank you. And do you have to return to the UK after your Fulbright Award, and what happens if you get a job abroad?
Okay, so this has to do with the 2-year home residency rule, which is attached to the J1 visa. So everyone on the Fulbright program has to go on the J1 visa, which is the government authorized exchange visa program. And that has a 2-year home residency rule attached to it. So that means after your program has finished, and I'll just insert here, there is an opportunity to apply for post-program work training, basically, for up to 18 months, depending on what program you did. So it's case by case. So after all of that has finished, you would have to return to your home country for 2 years before you can then go back to the US. So it's all about this going back to the US. If you have plans or ambitions to go stay and work in the US, you wouldn't be able to do that for 2 years after your Fulbright time has ended. In terms of working in another country, that there's nothing stopping you from doing that in terms of this visa. This is only a regulation controlling when you can go back to the US and get a visa to live or work back there in the US.
Okay, thank you. And we have a practical question related to the application instructions. The application instructions seem to refer to the fact that essays would be constructed online. But as far as I can see, the Embark system, essays are uploaded documents rather than constructed online. Are the guidelines outdated, or could I be using the wrong system?
The essays should be uploaded. So I'm not familiar with the instruction that says to type them online, but yes, you are correct, they need to be uploaded.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've already seen this, but you need to follow the UK guidelines on making your application, because the Embark system is accommodating all of the global Fulbright programs around the world. So some of the instructions are quite generic, but we have more specific UK guidelines. If ever in doubt, you can always email us to find out. Okay, so I'm going to read out another question here. So I've developed a main project for my Fulbright Scholar application, but I have a range of potential research interests at my host institution and support from different colleagues. What is the best way to incorporate these wider interests? Can I have a main project and other lines of inquiry? They will be related, but in some ways distinct. I can post more detail if needed.
Is this for a scholar application? It sounds like
yes,
a scholar
it's a
application.
Fulbright Scholar application. Yes.
That's a tricky question. It sounds to me like you should describe your main project as your research affiliation in your application, and then you can talk about your side projects, but we're more interested in that main project and the main output that you will be having from your affiliation in the US. So the side interests are fine to have, but I don't think that they should confuse the application as to what you're trying to achieve through this affiliation.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not surprising. A lot of our Fulbright awardees they're brimming with ideas and are very passionate, and they do have interests beyond their area of focus. But it's that walking that fine line between having a clear focused application with additional interests as opposed to having confused application. So you would need to have a primary focus, but we are definitely open-minded and often cases excited by additional activities happening while you're there, particularly if it incorporates different colleagues from different departments. That kind of collaborative attitude is something that we like. Okay, so if you apply for a PhD, should you already have a specialized objective dissertation idea ready? So this person's only 4 weeks into their master's, so.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it draws on the difference between the UK PhD system and the US PhD system. So in the US, you'll do a couple years of taught courses to begin your PhD, and then you'll start to focus in on your research. So a lot of times that research objective changes or crystallizes or focuses in a slightly different way. PhD, what you hope to get out of it from this perspective where you are right now. What do you want to achieve? What's your vision for the future through this PhD? Not so much a dissertation proposal, as I was saying before. It's not that specific at this stage.
Okay, great. Okay, so although I'm a British citizen, I hold an undergraduate degree from another country. Shall I provide any documentation to prove that it's at least a 2-1 UK equivalent? This is quite a technical question.
Yeah, that's very technical. But yeah, I think that would be fine if you provided as much information as you have on that degree equivalent.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Okay, so this person, my next question, would like to apply for a postgraduate award. This person's recently been accepted to Harvard for a master's degree, which they started last month and are completing part-time. They have completed all of the classes by spring next year and would like to apply for the scholarship in order to complete the research for the thesis, which starts in September 2019. They intend to conduct the research at Harvard full-time for 3 months from September to December 2019. Are they eligible for the Fulbright Award?
It sounds like, unfortunately, you are not, because you're currently in the US. If that's what I'm reading, you're currently doing a program at Harvard. So that would mean that you are not eligible to apply. People who are currently in the US during the application stage, unfortunately, are not eligible. Also, it sounds like your research would be a continuation of the master's degree, which also wouldn't be eligible. You would need to be starting a degree program or research project when you take up the Fulbright.
Okay, for those postdoctoral scholars applying for predominantly lab-based positions, we might not be able to involve ourselves in ambassadorial activities in the same way as those working on social science policy or business research, where broader collaboration on current issues is the norm. How much work on cultural exchange is expected of applications? Sorry, I just lost my... Does the Fulbright Commission offer examples of how previous scholars have made these kinds of activities clear in their application?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
It is a balance, juggling the academic work you've gone there to pursue and achieve the outcomes that you want, that you have in mind, and this cultural side of the program. There's no set sort of criteria, like you have to spend so many hours outside the lab, but we just are looking for that general desire to get involved in things outside the lab as much as your time would require. So some examples, people maybe volunteer with their department or the people running the lab to do some outreach on campus, or have certain clubs start a meetup of other people interested in that area. So it can be on-campus activities that you can get involved in. It doesn't have to be sort of anything hugely time-consuming, but it's just that ethos of meeting people, doing something other than your academic work, to have a different aspect of the American experience, or the experience wherever you are in the US. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, that's absolutely true. We are flexible. We sponsor people from a wide range of different subject areas, many from the field that you're describing, that would be doing a lot of lab-based research and work. But the one difference between Fulbright and some other academic funding is that we do have an expectation for some cultural immersion. So how that transpires is really flexible. Some people are coming with families and they end up actually getting to know the locals through their children and schools. Some people pursue activities for campus outreach, as Brittany explained, or some people might find something completely unrelated to their campus. And some of our scholars do a lot of their travel through conferences, for example, which is still attached to academia, and but they are getting around and traveling and meeting people. So it can happen. But what we don't want is somebody just to have experienced just the lab. And I come back with lots of research and progress in their research, but no idea of what the US culture is about. We do expect people to venture out a little bit. Okay, so is the study research objective essay, in the study research objective essay, do we reference specific universities? The UK specific instructions highlight this, but the general instructions say not to reference these specific universities.
Yes. We do want to know which universities you are interested in and applying to. So again, this is an issue with this being a shared application with all the countries, all the 160 countries that participate in the Fulbright program. Some countries place the applicants themselves, which is why they don't want to know what university that applicant is interested in at that stage. But we do, because we know that you're self-selecting, and it makes your application stronger to talk to us about which universities you're looking at.
Okay, does the Fulbright cover all tuition fees and living costs for the duration of a PhD?
Normally it would not, so it's up to $45,000 as a contribution towards whatever program that you select. But a lot of the times in the US, the PhDs do offer funding, so it just depends on the university and the program that you're going for. So that's something you should find out during your research phase. But a lot of times the PhDs will offer a tuition waiver and a stipend of some kind in exchange for that graduate assistantship and teaching assistantship work. And then the Fulbright funding could be used to top up the rest of your financial needs for living costs, etc.
And just as a reminder, we have 2 partner awards that sponsor an entire PhD, the Brown University Partner Award and the University of South Florida Partner Award. So have a look on our website for the details of those awards to see if they might be a good fit for what you're trying to do. I'm a visiting scholar. I am applying for a visiting scholar. There is a section regarding financial support online application process. Do I need to specify in details about the living costs, research, consumable costs, travel costs to US conferences, etc.? Yep, I'll let you.
I think that section on the application is asking for financial support that you may have contributing to this time in the US. I don't think it's asking you to specify your costs, but I'm not exactly sure about that part of the application. So if you wanted to type in your email, we could get back to you on that. Have a look at the section you're talking about.
Okay, so we've touched upon US universities. It might be interesting to flesh that a little bit about how much detail you would recommend they go into about their US university choices, and even how many universities typically our applicants apply to.
Yes, so start with how many universities we recommend. Both for focus of your application and because there are financial considerations for you as an applicant applying to multiple US universities, we recommend about 4 to 5 for you to narrow down to about 4 to 5 US universities at this stage. So in terms of the financial considerations, there is an application fee with each of the US university applications. So bearing that in mind, you may not want to apply to multiple universities. So that's up to you to manage that part of the process. In terms of focusing your application, the more universities you're still considering, the less focused your application looks, and the less focused the application is, the less compelling of a project and academic statement that is. So we recommend putting in the time to narrow down to maybe 4 or 5 maximum programs. That's not to say you can't apply to, if you have 6 that you really want to go to, that's fine, you can apply to all those. Don't take up too much time in your application talking about why you're still going between these universities or why you've chosen one in particular. But do talk about it, do let us know what are those reasons. So if you're still considering between a list of universities, talk about why you're still considering those at this point and why your project would be different at the different universities. And if you're considering just one, you can definitely tell us why that's the right fit for you. But like I said, don't spend too much time in your essay. There's a lot of valuable information you want to communicate to us there, but just show that you put some thought into it and how that impacts what you're hoping to get out of doing the Fulbright.
Yeah, and we just want to know the rationale. So you could have a few different options available, but we want to know what your rationale is, to know that you've thought deeply about what you're trying to do, as opposed to someone that just wants a ticket to the US, hasn't really thought about the academic side of things, for example. Okay, so I have another Embark application question. There's a disclaimer mentioning something like Fulbright can apply to universities on your behalf. Is it relevant to the UK branch? I apologise for not citing the exact text, but we know what you're talking about the IIE placements that they do. Yeah,
so I just briefly spoke about this, but in some countries, the Fulbright program will place students at universities that they have partnerships with, or that they have spaces available for students. We don't do that in the UK, so it's up to the applicants to apply to the US universities, get a place, and then apply to Fulbright in that separate application process for that project. So that part of the embark application is not relevant to the UK.
Okay. Okay, so if our application is successful, could we get the award for a university that we didn't initially list in our application?
That does happen sometimes, and that's fine, as long as you give us an update. So if you get selected for an interview, say, and you have applied to an extra university that you didn't put in your application, that would be the time to tell us that you've applied to an extra university or another university, and there's an opportunity for you to talk about that in your interview. If this occurs after your interview, you would need to get approval from us if you were made an offer for that new program, because we've given you your award based on the proposal that you've given us up to that point, and if you change it, then you would need to just get further approval from us.
Okay, so references often come up with our questions. So could you talk a little bit, Brittany, about what we want from our references? Do all 3 references need to be academic, for example?
Right, so all 3 don't have to be academic. What we're really looking for in references is for you to choose 3 people that can tell us something about you that hasn't been told in your application, or that you would like to emphasize in your application. So you should choose 3 people who have a perspective that you want to share with us in your application. So if those are academics, that's fine. If they're professional or from some other aspect of your life that you're involved in, projects on the side or volunteering, that's also fine. But make sure that it's something that you would want us to know about you in your application. It's a piece of that puzzle that we're putting together when we're reading through your application. We recommend, if you're in university or in academia, that at least 2 be from university, but that's not a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, and just to add to that, that some people might think that it would be more attractive to have, say, a really high-profile person as a referee, but such a person that maybe doesn't know the applicant as well, assuming it might impress us that that person is high-profile or got really high credentials. But really, that won't matter if that person can't actually say anything personal about you from personal experience. So what really stands out is a really warm, positive, personal reference based on experience, as opposed to someone with an impressive job title that doesn't actually know you very well. So bear that in mind, because it really does stand out, good references, when we're going through the applications. So. Okay, is there any more questions that coming through? Is there any on Facebook? I think we seem to be towards the end of our questions so far. If anybody wants to get them in now, now's your time. In the meantime, I'm just having a think about any questions that we typically get from applicants at this stage in the competition. We sometimes get questions about if individuals are eligible if they've studied in the US before. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you are eligible. Having spent time or studied abroad in the US does not make you ineligible. The rule with the Fulbright program is that we give preference at every stage of the competition to those who have not had significant, extensive recent experience in the US. So if there were 2 equal candidates on every level, preference would go to the person who has no experience in the US. That being said, it is fine if you have spent time in the US or studied abroad, and you can say why that sparks your interest in going back to the US, what you think will be different this time, and what you think you'll learn in addition to what you learned when you were there before. That's totally fine. It won't disadvantage you or make you ineligible.
And then non-UK citizens applying within the EU?
Yes, so the Fulbright Award, one of the basic eligibility requirements is to be a UK citizen. However, we understand that a lot of countries in the EU, their eligibility criteria is different from ours. So if you hadn't studied, for example, university in that country, then you wouldn't be eligible for Fulbright in that country. So in those cases, if you're an EU citizen, you've gone to university here, or you're living and working here in the UK, you can make an application to us. We would ask that you provide proof that you are not eligible in your home country commission, as that would be your first option for being eligible for a Fulbright Award. So if you're not eligible in your home country, you're welcome to apply with us. And also, if you have made your life and career in the UK, you can also make a case to us that you could be considered in our competition, and we would look at your application and decide if you would be eligible.
Okay, and if our application is successful, could we get the award for a university? Oh, sorry, no, I've already asked that one. When will we be notified if we are invited for an interview?
Yes, that happens in January. So the deadline, I'll just remind everyone, the deadline is the 6th of November, a couple of weeks from now. And you likely won't hear from us again until January, because during that time we're doing our selection process and the academic review and drawing up that short list. So the first time we will communicate with you in most cases is January, when we invite you to the interview. So that normally happens the 3rd or 4th week of January.
Perfect, thank you. And how far along should the application to the university or school be when they're submitting a Fulbright application? Is it sufficient just to have made contact and had a conversation with the US university?
Yes, if that's a postgraduate question, that's fine. A lot of the US university postgraduate programs have deadlines after our deadline, so December, January, February, some are even in March. So we understand that a lot of these applications won't be happening until a later time. So it's completely fine if you haven't made an application or started your application to the US universities.
Right, and we have a person who is going to a private US institution that is in the UK. Would that disqualify them from applying? So
no, if you're in the UK, it's fine. You're still eligible.
the private US university is based in the UK, from what I understand from that question. So
that's fine. The ineligibility is if you're in the US.
But they would be doing their Fulbright experience in the UK at a US university in the UK. So I don't think they would.
No, that's not eligible. So the Fulbright, to do Fulbright, to go to US. Yeah, I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so may scholarships be pursued at government organisations such as NASA, NOAA? Is this this is for postgraduate or scholar
it actually
award, but
could be both. So we've had postgraduates do research at the National Institutes of Health in the US, which is the government organization. But like most of the time that happens at the postgraduate level. If you're doing a PhD program here in the UK and you wanted to go do a year or so of research, up to a year of research at a governmental institution to contribute to that PhD. If it's a independent project and you're not currently in a program, we would have to look at that further. So if you have a different situation, you can write into us, and then that would be a case-by-case question to answer.
Okay, we've got a really good question here. What are some of the top things that applicants get wrong in weak applications, which they should try to avoid?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've actually never been asked that in outreach before. I would say one of the main mistakes is to not put forth a clear reason for going to the US, pursuing this project, and communicating your wider vision for it. So if it's just, oh, I'm interested in going to this university and studying this program, that's not enough. You need above and beyond to that point. What motivates you to pursue this, and what do you want to do after? So take us on that whole journey in your application.
Yeah, impact you plan to have, turning what you plan to do with that information. You know, for us, we recognise that there's a lot of professional and personal development with Fulbright Award, but we hope that the impact of Fulbright Award won't just touch the individual, but that individual will then have a positive impact on other people, whether that's the local communities they're going back into, or whether it's impact for research or various other different ways. So that kind of long vision to some extent of doing something more than just boosting your CV is important, and it really shines through good applications. References are also important for the reasons we've already explained, getting people that can really speak to who you are and your achievements and your strengths. And I mean, a lot of things we've covered inadvertently throughout the session, but choosing your US university, again, we don't expect tons of justification, but there are some universities that we get a lot of applications for, and we want to know, not just necessarily, we don't want to hear that, oh, it's the best university known to mankind. We want to know what particular programs and what it was about the university that spoke to you personally. So just bear in mind that if you're applying to a university that is going to be very popular, and we want to know specifically why. In our eyes, there's lots of really good universities in the US, and it's important that you just, it's about a good match rather than the ranking or the reputation that university has here in the UK. So getting that across to us is quite important too. I think there's a thing. We'll keep thinking. I'm sure there'll be other things that come up as we go. But that's a really good question. Okay, I think so there was one more question on Facebook about the second year of funding, but that was covered earlier on in the session. So to that person, we encourage you to maybe watch the recording and come back to that. But we gave lots of tips about how to navigate the process, but also additional resources for funding outside of Fulbright. So please do read back to that. But if there's no more additional questions at this stage, I think we're going to tune out. But just if you think of any questions between after now, you can ask us questions. And if you can summon up the energy and the motivation to complete your application, and you're really serious about going to the US, then I definitely encourage you all to do it, because it's it's a really great opportunity, and you won't get it unless you apply. So good luck, and please be in touch if you have any further questions. Please explore our website as well.